Charles, how you doing?
I'm great. It's Friday. I got big plans this weekend here
Oh,
in New
what are your
York.
plans this weekend? What are you doing this weekend?
It's so funny you should ask. No, I've got a couple dinners, got a little reception tomorrow night. I'm going to this place in the Upper West Side that I'm excited about that has Italian food. I like chicken parm.
Oh,
A very basic taste, but they have good chicken parm, so I'm excited about that. And
oh
I'm
man.
going to do a run on Sunday. I'm going to try to do 12 miles.
Wow, all that time for yourself.
All that time for
You know, I
myself.
mean, as you know, I'm the father of two small children, and if I was to be honest with you, your weekend sounds like a vacation to me. I mean, I feel like I'm missing out a little. I don't know.
What an unbelievably wonderful segue into fear of missing out. Nobody's ever going to see through that.
Totally unplanned. Totally unplanned. Spontaneous.
So we're talking about FOMO today, which is really basically this idea where we believe that others are having rewarding experiences and that we're being left out of them. And, it really was it kind of started as a marketing term, I don't know, about 15 years ago. And it has really quickly become part of the lexicon, not only of the general public, but certainly when we think about it relative to investing in our financial plans. And I think, Brad, the challenge, there's several challenges with this. One of them, though, is that, I always give the analogy of, it's a Friday night, not like the one that I described that I'm going to have, but on a Friday night, you're sitting at home and, you're binge watching your favorite next Netflix show, and you've got your significant other with you. You're in sweatpants. The weather's lousy outside. You got your, Haagen-Dazs ice cream, cookies and cream would be good for me. And you're just happy as a clam, right? You're just thrilled about everything. And then, you pause the show because somebody has to go to the bathroom or whatever it is. And so you pick up your phone and you go to Instagram, or maybe, I don't know, somebody probably still goes to Facebook. You go to Facebook. I mean, not Facebook.
We're streaming to Facebook right now, Charles. So try not to insult.
So Facebook. You go to Facebook, as you have right now, and and you suddenly see, these pictures of people that are like on a beach or they're out at a bar. I don't understand why people post pictures of themselves at bars, by the way. I mean, people know I don't have a drinking problem, but I drink a lot. I don't need to give them more.
Drinking's not a problem for you.
Look at me. I mean, they should, let's post a picture of me getting help. Anyway, I digress. So suddenly now, after you've gone through that experience where you were happy with your significant other, now you have this comparison. Now it's changed. Now you're not as happy because you think you could be, somebody's in Cancun, somebody's at this bar, somebody's doing this. And suddenly your whole just feeling about the evening has changed.
Absolutely. Which brings me to the question here. Have you ever made an investing mistake due to FOMO? I'm asking this of our audience, and I'll just share with you that I absolutely have. And it was when I was 29 years old. I got out of grad school, owed $100,000 student loan debt. You've heard this story, but I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 trading stocks, and I was like, yeah, talk about fear of missing out. I thought, oh my goodness, I can get out of debt doing this. And I did the classic poor mindset approach to investing. And the poor mindset approach to investing is where I cobbled together about $7,000, and my goal was to take that $7,000 and trade my way to $100,000 in 1 year to pay off my student loans. And we talk about this, Charles, like the wealthy mindset is the get rich slowly approach.
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
If investing is exciting for you, you're probably going about it all wrong. It shouldn't. Right. It should actually be fairly boring.
Yeah.
Unless you want to lose all your money. But that was entirely driven by my desire to pay off debt, but also like my fear of missing out. Like markets were going crazy. Everyone's making tons of money. And, this happened recently with crypto. Like a lot of people got sucked into it who even knew that it probably wasn't a great idea. And what they did is they bought in at the top. And then this is what we do. It's just a classic mistake. We feel like we're missing out on the party. The market goes up, whatever asset class it is, and then we buy at the top, right? This is the classic way that we mess ourselves up. And a lot of that, I think, is driven by FOMO.
It is driven. I mean, and it's, it's really this, when you think about it relative to social media, you're not only competing with other experiences that people are having, you're actually competing with fiction in many regards, right? So let's go back to the example that I gave on the Friday night. not a lot of people, although some people do post about, binge watching and whatnot, but most of the time people are curating content. So you're watching something that's not even real. People are posting highlights, and everybody that's listening to this knows this, right? And especially if you know the people that you're engaged with on social media, it makes it a lot easier. And I write about this in my books that, it's like, if I see posts from John that it looks like he's on vacation every 3 weeks, I'm thinking, man, here I am working like a dog in this job. John, this guy, he's got a way better life than I do. But if I know John, I say, hey, yeah, I see what he's posted on social media. John's a mess. John's got all kinds of problems here. I see what he's posting somewhere. So now I have a better sense of it. But when you're competing with fiction, and as an investor, when you're only seeing, like the baseball analogy, when you're only seeing the home runs and the highlights, it creates the perception that the game is very different than what it actually is. There are a lot more strikeouts than our home runs when we're talking about like things like crypto, right? And so people have this tendency to want to show off these big wins that they have, when in reality they had 20 losses. And people that lose everything don't usually post on social media that they lost it all.
Charles, I got to mention CJ right now, who just put in a comment from LinkedIn. We're streaming to multiple platforms, and CJ's just hit the nail on the head. He's like, clearly the cryptocurrency craziness last year was partially due to FOMO. And he pointed out that he loved the total absence of crypto commercials this year in the Super Bowl. And it was very different the last Super Bowl. To your point that, when things aren't going well, we're not really advertising it on social media. And one of a really powerful marketing technique that takes advantage of people who are quite often come from humble beginnings, and they're trying to make a better life for themselves, is this fear of missing out. So what they'll do is they'll show you images of people leaning up against a luxury car, sporting a luxury watch, standing in front of a mansion that probably isn't theirs. And this whole idea is to like, wow, this person has something that could get me rich, really quickly, and I'm missing out. And so to your point around marketing, is that's a really effective marketing strategy, is to make people feel deprived, to feel like they're missing out, and then to be like, I hold the key to the get rich quick formula. And, for just $9.95, you can buy my course.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And I think the idea of some of these things being boring by nature, I think is really, really critical. I think about that in a lot of other cases too. I mean, like government should be it should just run. It shouldn't necessarily be, if it's exciting every day, there's probably a problem. And that's right. The same thing when it comes to relative to investments. And I think, if you have a plan that an advisor has provided for you, or you have your own goals that you've set, like, if you've sat down and you're really, really disciplined, or you're working to become really disciplined, and you have financial goals relative to saving and investing and whatnot, when you revisit those goals, you should once in a while think about this idea of, I go back to the analogy of the gym. I'm full of analogies today, but if you start a fitness plan and you say to yourself, you know what, I know this is going to get tough at some point. I'm going to hit a wall at some point, and it's probably going to happen. Maybe it's week 4, maybe it's week 8, whenever it is, but I'm going to struggle with this. I know I am, and I'm going to work through it. Your chances of getting through that go way up, because when you actually do hit those hurdles, you're going to say, yeah, I saw this coming. I knew this was going to happen, and I'm going to go through it. Relative to FOMO and investing, I knew there was going to be temptation. I knew I was going to hear about things that were too good to be true, or these wins that were lightning in a bottle. I'm putting my head down and I'm continuing on the path that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of what you said there that is so important is acknowledging our individual risk. It's real easy for us to sit back. We're all vulnerable to this. Sit back and be like, oh, look at these idiots and what they're doing. I would never do that. Well, the bottom line is we are all wired to be vulnerable to FOMO. We're all wired to be vulnerable to social comparison. And it really helps to acknowledge that and know that, because if you pretend it's not true, that's when you're more likely to make a mistake. I was telling my wife in the midst of COVID, here's a big surprise, that I thought we should get a Sprinter van. I just really thought that this was the thing we should do. And then we could travel around with it and everything.
Become
And
one of
what I
those
did
van people. You were going to become one of those van people.
Well, yeah. And I just felt like it was the right thing to do, Charles. And I had a lot of logical reasons for this. I presented an entire logical argument about why this made sense. And then one day I was walking to my office and I do this for a living. So I would say it's embarrassing, although it's not at all, because I recognize I'm vulnerable to it. But I decided to count how many Sprinter vans I saw on my short walk to my office. And I got up to like 8 or 9 of them. And it's like every day I'm walking by all these Sprinter vans. And instead of recognizing that this is why I wanted a Sprinter van, this was the actual reason why I wanted a Sprinter van, because I felt like I was missing out. I felt like everybody's got one in my neighborhood. And I was very vulnerable to constructing a whole argument that took away the emotional aspects, the social comparison aspects, the feeling deprived aspects. I didn't acknowledge any of those in my brain. I just felt this need that I should get it. And I had a really well-constructed argument. And a lot of times when we get sucked into an investment or a get-rich-quick strategy or a purchase like that, people will create all these, this entire cognitive framework that makes them look intelligent and smart for wanting this. Like one of my favorite things is I'll talk about the research on how most millionaires are frugal, for example. And, they're not the ones buying all the luxury brands. Like these are just statements of fact. And I'll talk about the social comparison. And then some comments I will often get is like, yeah, but what about, I'm just an enthusiast, I just like the way it makes me feel, and it's like, yes, of course you do. It's because it's social comparison. And just recognizing that there's so much power in recognizing we're all vulnerable to it.
Yeah. And getting into what your goals are and how important they are to you. And that can tie into intrinsic goals of having savings goals that are related to everything from vacations to the education goals that are named after your children and those types of things that make it intrinsic. I have to tell you though, the biggest, I don't even know. I live in New York. I don't know what a Sprinter van is. What is that? I thought
people in New York City don't really understand, car ownership or, for good reason, because it costs way too much money, right?
That's right. It's exactly.
Anyway, I'm not going to tell you about it because you're going to want one. You're going to start getting some FOMO when I describe it to you. So I'll save you a few $100,000.
I think I already offended the van people already. I said, you becoming one of those van people. So I probably shouldn't have said
Well, if you want to increase your social media following, you should just totally go pretend at least you're living in a van for a few months. You'll explode.
Down by the river.
Yeah, pound van life. You'll kill it.
I could park it right here. I'm at the East River. I could park it right here. So anyway, so the other part about this is as we get back on track is this idea of instant gratification, right? And that is probably as powerful as any of the other elements we're talking about today, is that we want it right now, and we want everything from a technology perspective is relatively frictionless for us, and so it makes us impatient. There's great research on like how many times the average person pushes an elevator button. They'll push up to go up and it'll illuminate. The average person, I think, will push it like 3 times if they wait longer than I think it's like 70 seconds. I forget, there was some bank in Chicago that I think it was Fifth Third did this research. I don't know why they're doing this research, but they did. But it's fascinating, right? That we're so impatient. It's the damn thing's already lit and we're hitting it again. So we have this impatience, and we have this, we live in this frictionless world. And so we want this really, really fast. And I just think about that idea of fast is slow and slow is fast when it comes to our goals and whatnot, and asking yourself, I always found that every major thing that I did in my life, I had a much higher likelihood of achieving it if I realized that I didn't need to finish it on a given night, like writing a book or writing a dissertation or something. I'd have to write the whole damn book in one night, but I did need to get one paragraph or one page or one chapter done. And I think that's the same with our goals. If we have smaller goals and not get thinking that, we can get rich immediately, but just make progress. And if we're working with an advisor, checking in with them, making sure that we're making progress. If you're not working with an advisor and you have savings and investing goals, are you getting closer to your goals, your objectives, or not?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that too is just understanding and doing some research on how people get to where you want to go. Like how are most people becoming, for example, millionaires? Like what are they doing? Like how are they behaving? Because to your point on social media, we're seeing outliers. Frankly, we're being lied to a lot of times too.
Yeah,
It's like,
for sure.
is this really happening? Like, is that couple really that happy? I saw some interesting research on Facebook where the more that people post about how in love they are with their partner, the lower their actual relationship satisfaction. And this is something to actually just, make. Well, first of all, I hope that you have high relationship satisfaction, but also to just sort of recognize that, hey, look, social media is sort of wired to make us all feel terrible about ourselves.
That's right.
During COVID, I would see people reading a book, drinking some coffee by themselves, and I would be envious of that experience because I had 2 children. People who are single would quite often look at couples cuddling up on the couch and playing board games with their kids and feel like they're missing out. Just understanding that this is a natural human phenomenon can really help protect you from making some of those big investment mistakes that we're all vulnerable to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's always going to be, I mean, there are a lot of advantages to social media. So we're beating it up a little bit here, but I think it does create this fertile ground for wanting things that we don't have, right? And so many people, perhaps you could almost say almost everyone on social media, you've actually have become content creators. And to a point that it's curating content, and it's actually taking on experiences and in some cases risks in order to have the best content, to have more attention. I write about it and call it attention panhandling, right? So if I take on more risk, and you can look at, the number of lives that have been lost because of these dangerous selfies that people have taken, right? This changed their whole element of risk because they want to get that element of attention, right? Which is, it's not even really attention when you really think about it, likes and comments and whatnot. So if having an understanding in a vacuum of, okay, where do I want to be relative to my investing in the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever time horizon you pick, and pick a path, learn as much as you can, work with an advisor if you can, and then just focus on that and continue as you re-engage your accounts and check in once in a while. Am I getting closer or am I not? And that's the ultimate question, not what other people are doing. Because by the way, the one thing we didn't talk about with this, it even goes with you when you go on the websites that are giving advice. They don't know what your goals are, what your income and scenario is. It's a ridiculous comparison. So focusing on what you have is just absolutely vital. Doesn't mean you can't learn more and there aren't great resources, but be well informed, set your goals, and make sure you're working towards them.
I love it. Find somebody who's a step or two ahead of you that you can sort of vet. Like, it's a friend of your uncle's. It's somebody who is working in the same office, but they're in a supervisory role, whatever it is. Like, you want to write a book, find somebody who's written a book. Those are the people you want to pick their brain. How did they get there? What did they do? And what you're going to find is that, those scenarios around, I just won the lottery, that is extremely rare. And most people who are approaching money that way are losing. I mean, the vast majority. Most people are trying to beat the market, fail to do so. Even the experts on Wall Street, statistically speaking, are very unlikely over any given time to beat the market. So I think it's really important to recognize our vulnerability to this. This is just how we're wired. We're very much wired to be looking where are we in terms of our status within the crowd. We're wired to do this. All of us are. And recognizing that it can make us prone to be making some mistakes. And the key really here around all of these investing decisions, I believe, is to take some time before you pull the trigger on, because a lot of it's emotional. I think this helps with spending. It helps with investing decisions. You want to calm down that emotional brain. You want to have that prefrontal cortex. This, Dr. Cognitive Psychologist, you want to engage that part of your brain before you make those decisions. Think through the consequences. Think through the likely outcomes. Put some time between that impulse and that action. You can save yourself a lot of money.
Yeah. But there's lots of. I know we're getting close to running short on time here, but there's lots of good data on if you provide some element of friction before somebody goes on to their a smartphone app, even if it's like 5 seconds, it will actually deter. And there are different apps and whatnot that actually can help with that. But any element of friction, even as short as 5 seconds, can actually deter it. So but it goes back to what you're talking about, is having a little bit of time there. And the other thing I wanted to mention, although I did want to mention psychologyofinancialplanning.com, if you want to check us out, what we're doing. When you go into a casino, And I do go into a casino, but I have a limit. I go in, I like the $3 tables. I like the $3 tables. You go in, and what they're so brilliant at is you go in and you'll see pictures of winners around the casino, right? At different spots, and they're holding up the check and they're dressed like, normal folks, right? And what that is FOMO. Okay. Because what they're doing is they're saying that can be you. I don't know any casinos that are holding up pictures of people with like their, when you have the pockets out, like you're drunk, like you're broke.
Yeah,
right?
most people are actually leaving.
Hey, I lost my house. I lost everything here.
Wait, before you go, as you're in tears, wait,
Right.
before you go, we'd love to take a picture.
Right. And we're not laughing at that situation of people that have gambling problems and whatnot. But the point of that is it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Those games are designed not to win. And so if you just think about those things critically, it's going to help you meet your savings and investing goals.
Absolutely. So we got to run, but thanks for being here. If you don't have this book, you should. All your friends have it.
That's true. They do.
And they're enjoying it so much right now, and you're missing out. So if you're interested in psychology of financial planning, check us out at the website, check out the book, and we'll catch you next time.
And a Sprinter van near you.
Love it. Yeah, by the way, you would blow up on social media in a Sprinter van. We should let's get off this live and we should talk about this. It'd be a good investment for you, Charles.
Drive it into the East River.